Daddy eats lots. Daddy eats lots. Daddy eats lots. Munch, munch, munch.
Hello and welcome to Daddy Eats Last. We discuss the challenge of being a man in modern society and whatever the hell that even means. I'm Kane, and back this week is Matthew, and as always, Mr. Ebert. Ryan, how are you guys?
Good, boys. Back from annual leave, so that was nice to have some time off. I was actually in Melbourne last weekend, but at a place where internet was very, very poor, so I thought I'd chime out. Mother's Day today. Yeah. It's fantastic. Always a good day of the year.
We'll jump into that shortly. What about your day, Ryan? Your week?
Yeah, good. We lost another game of hockey, but this one was 4-2, not 13-1 or something like that last time. And I'm spouting a black eye from boxing classes, but other than that, the week's been pretty good. Although I think people at work are taking me a lot more seriously now that they find out that I do boxing classes.
Oh, that is another episode we'll discuss in a couple of weeks' time. I think boxing and fights and things like that, which is not something which I'm totally into, but will be a really good topic in having our opinions on that. But tonight, as Maddie mentioned before, it was Mother's Day today here in Australia. So we thought it'd be a good time to chat about our mothers, what motherhood means to us as sons, and to a couple of us now as fathers as well. So, gents, Mother's Day. How did you celebrate with your mothers? Did you celebrate with your mothers?
I celebrated with the mother-in-law. My mum's down in Melbourne, so I gave her a phone call throughout the day, which is good to speak to her. As for the mother of my children, we kicked off the day giving her a bit of a sleep in, went and got her a coffee from her favourite coffee shop, let her drink that while we went out and got some bagels for her. Found out that said coffee shop put the wrong milk in, but that's okay. She still drank it.
You stick for the rest of the day, but happy days.
Munched down some bagels and then went and visited the in-laws and came back for a nice family walk. So it was a beautiful day up here in Brizzy. So yeah, I think she had a great day. I'll ask her after this.
I like the assumption. The assumption of a great day is always a good start, I think. Like, as long as she told you that it wasn't a bad day, I think it's a fair assumption.
Yeah, well, I think we ticked all the boxes today. So we
apart from the milk in the coffee box.
Yeah,
that was the
right at the start of the day.
Barista's fault.
That's right. I can't be held accountable for that. Thank God.
I've always preferred a barista over barrister, but in that instance, they're not done you much.
No, not at all. So, but we'll go back there again, and I'll just make a little complaint to them. See what that's out.
What about you, Ryan? How's Mother's Day for you? Obviously, your mum's in Perth, and you're based in Melbourne.
Correct. Mother's Day is one of those things that it's going to sound bad, but throughout the week leading up to it, you kind of forget about it. Because, and that's nothing if my mum's listening, it's not forgetting about you. She was over here a little while ago, and that was fantastic. But yeah, because both TK and I are interstate children from our parents. So TK's parents are up in Queensland there, and we my mother is over in WA. So we sort of usually forget about it until we're told throughout the week that it's Mother's Day this weekend. So we woke up and went out to brunch, and I've done a little bit of work today and did a bit of shopping, and then basically went and played hockey. So that was my celebratory Mother's Day thing. And we don't have children of our own yet. But no, obviously gave Mum a nice phone call, and we got some presents and some goodies for her, which may have been ordered only yesterday because of, again, forgetting that Mother's Day is on Sunday. Thank you, internet. So yeah, Mother's Day is a bit of an anticlimax for us, to be honest.
It makes a difference when there's a mother in the house, I think, where I was much the same before we had the little fella, where Mother's Day didn't really, I was saying that didn't mean that much. It was kind of like not a priority. This year, my mum's overseas on holiday, so I wished her a happy Mother's Day yesterday due to time zones, and also asked her if she'd voted because her postal vote arrived in the mail. I said, well, have you guys voted yet? Which they had. I think it does make a difference when there's a mother in your house, because you actually have to put the thinking cap on about what you're going to do for, well, obviously at this age where I don't think, apart from maybe your eldest there, Maddie, the kids are pretty useless when it comes to, you know, making breakfast in bed or ordering a coffee or buying a present or basically anything. So you actually have to put a little bit of thought into the lead up, where it used to be literally, oh, Jesus, Mother's Day. Okay, Mum, we'll just drive up to your house.
Look, the great thing about that is, though, Kane, and you'll find out soon with your little guy, is at whatever establishment they're at, kindy, daycare, school, they make presents, and the present sort of factor is sorted. So, Ryan, if in the lead up, if you don't remember until like the Friday, then you're okay, because presents are coming home from school or wherever in the school bags. So yeah.
Yeah, we got. In fairness, we had a couple of hands made out of paint, which were his hands in paint, obviously made into a butterfly. I'm not sure that cut the mustard, and a jacket was required for a Mother's Day present. So yeah, I get where you're coming from, Maddie, but at the same time, wasn't the sentimental sort of value of it needed to be sort of added to with some monetary value.
They are quite crap sometimes, aren't they? But the the thought is there, I guess, from the kids, and it is quite cute getting something like that. But you're right, you do need to top up the.
I think the best bit was I actually ducked out this morning to get a bunch of flowers, so the little fella could carry a bunch of flowers up the hallway, which I thought would be quite nice. And he walks them in there, and my better half says to him, "Oh, mate, when did you get them?" He goes, "Oh, I went to the market this morning and I picked them." I'm like, that's a straight up lie, absolute fabrication, mate. I've gone out it was freezing here in Melbourne, or not freezing, but cold enough. I've gone out at first thing in the morning to fetch these flowers, and he takes all the glory up into the market first thing this morning and picked them.
Kids' honesty is fantastic. We had a similar thing this morning as well, where we stopped off on the way to the in-laws and just ran out of time, so we just picked up a cake from Coles. Kimmy took off all the wrapping, so it looked like it could have been from anywhere. We get inside and we sit down and we'll, start to open up and eat it. And Grandma's like, "Oh, where'd you get the cake from?" Eloise straight away. "Oh, Coles." Like, "No, Eloise, patisserie. We got it from a patisserie."
Oh man, that kid honesty, you can't beat it. Like even purchasing a card. I bought you the card the other day, Mummy. And then I wrote in your card this afternoon, Mummy. Like it's just straight out, just exactly what has happened. Just gets nailed with it. Having kids yourself now, Matthew, does it make you kind of think any differently about the sacrifices? Like, I guess especially our age, the sacrifices that mothers in that sort of age group would have made back sort of 35, 40 years ago? Because obviously there's a lot of different relationships and a lot of different roles back then to what exists now. And it'd be the same for you, Ryan. Does how I guess the community view motherhood and women now, does that change, do you think, since when we were kids?
I think it has. My mum worked up until she was pregnant with me, and then after she had me, she stayed at home, was a stay-at-home mum. And then once us kids went to school, she started working with my dad in his business. And so from that point of view, I guess parents these days are more putting their kids in daycare if they can also work. So, both parents are working, and the mother is either, working just as hard as the dad to make, things great at home. But then there's also the stay-at-home duties, I guess, that don't go away. I mean, just because, the kids aren't at home and you're at work, there's things just pile up, in the evening. So often when I'm doing some nightly chores, I often think to myself, geez, my mum, worked hard to be able to, work for my dad plus raise 3 kids as well. Dad was more of and I think we've spoken on this before, the outside kind of guy. He'd mow the lawns, he'd keep the outside clean. But in terms of ironing, washing, cooking the meals, making sure us kids had lunches, all that, getting us off to school, that was all mum. And in our current situation at home at the moment, so Kimmy and I both share those jobs. So, I think, well, from my point of view, my mum definitely, she was a magician, and she was an awesome baker as well. So there'd always be, entree, main, dessert, sort of most nights of the week, and birthday cakes. And so they did do a hell of a lot back then, and they still do now.
No Coles cakes?
No Coles cakes, no. Baked from scratch.
You, Ryan?
Yeah, I think just even like whether the changes are much the same to Maddie. So my mum was a stay-at-home mum with 3 kids up until about my youngest sister. She sort of did a bit of work here and there at times, but really made sure that we were very much looked after. And also, growing up, my dad would, with his role in the Air Force at long periods of time, would actually be away. So there was a bit of restriction there. But then when we got a bit older, she did go into work and did some businesses and that kind of thing. And I think it really, when I moved out of home about 19, it became a huge eye opener at how much what Matt just said there, the effort and the amount of things that they did. Mums in particular, they seem to, I think even now that the view of it has changed, and if anything, they're shouldering even more responsibility. But the amount of effort that went into things, like I remember birthdays, same thing, we'd never have a bought cake. It would be 3 hours the night before or however long. And I remember having like Pokemon cakes and dinosaur cakes or whatever we were into at that time, just crafted. And yeah, as soon as I moved out, I realized, shit, they do a lot of work, as well as just, participate hugely well in life, work, community, and all those kind of things. So I think when you become an adult, you have a huge amount of appreciation for your parents. And I think I'll find next level, but everyone that tells me that when you have kids, that goes up a whole nother level.
Yeah, I think just the kid thing just adds the context of you're actually living what they lived. Probably we have more creature comforts now and more ways to kind of, I guess, deal with kids. More information as well, which is probably a harder aspect of parenting these days compared to back 30 years ago. But it's the context of, okay, I'm living this and this is what my parents did and the roles back then, which they just were. Most of the time it was the mum doing that. There's no breaks. There's no real structure to the day. A lot of the time there's not really much of, I say, a life outside of kids and the house and the chores and all that sort of stuff. And it's every damn day. Like you're buttering up day after day after day after day, doing the same thing with kids and the same thing in the house. Like it's an amazing thing that, and we're talking about mums here, but dads do it now as well. And I'm sure dads did it a little bit back in the day, but we're talking about mums, and primarily mums do this and sacrifice a lot for their children. And man, when you live through having a kid, and we've got a 3 and a bit year old now, like, and we're only 3 years in, we haven't gone through like starting the school, and then when they go to high school and you'd fret then, and when they get their license and leave home, all that sort of stuff, sort of next level as well. But just the day to day, like just seeing what you need to do to keep a child alive. Kudos to especially every mum out there. It's amazing.
It is a massive list, isn't it, Kane? It is absolutely huge. Like I mentioned before, how Kim and I do. We share a lot of tasks, but then there's so many tasks that she'll do by herself, like in terms of life admin, like vaccinations and doctors and school fees and uniforms and all that kind of stuff, which is coming to mind now that I realise, wow, I probably need to do a bit more, to be honest. But it is, massive list of things.
Oh yeah, we'd have no gas in the house or no electricity in the house if it wasn't for my better half. I feel. And even with Prince Harry this week, and him coming out and chatting about the kid they had and what Meghan went through. Oh, I'm talking about the royals. If people didn't know, it was on Instagram and stuff. Him talking about what his wife went through, Meghan went through to give birth. Even that is flippin' unreal. And to think, your wife's gone through it 3 times, Matt. Your mum went through it 3 times. Ryan, your mum went through it 3 times. My mum went through
Correct.
it twice. It's an ordeal and knocks them around. And
yeah, I think what Matt said there about the sacrifices and that really happen. I think it's a huge appreciation to see now, and sort of just in the working world and as an adult and building career and all those kind of things, that the sacrifice that I have the appreciation that I have for my mum for the sacrifice that she did to give us just genuinely time with her. Like, she made it very important that we had time as a family. My brother and sister are only close because of the time and effort and everything that my mum put into the family and the family unit and all that kind of thing. And something's got to give there. And you know, in the cases back then and sort of how the roles played out back then, but for a lot of you know, mums back then, it was career. And now my mum being a single mum and that kind of thing is, you know, she's still quite young and that, so she's got to play, but she's playing a bit of catch up with super and career and all those kind of things for those sacrifices that she made for us. It does mean that come Mother's Day, she does get very nice presents, but just a appreciation of everything that they do. And you know, being a parent, I have heard, and she has also told me, that at times it can be a very thankless job. So to make that sacrifice with, you know, all of that in the context as well is just utter appreciation and phenomenal for anyone that does it.
Yeah, I think kids take a lot for granted until they get older and they have to do it themselves. And that's not anything to do actually having a kid yourself, just having to do it yourself, like, you know, cook for yourself, clean your house, you know, do everything that, you know, when you're still living at home, that somebody would do for you. So it's just that that reliance on somebody else is now gone. When you have to start fending for yourself, yeah, I think it really kicks in at just about how much effort and time is the most important thing. Yeah, your parents have sacrificed for you.
You touched on information, Kane, a little bit before. Parents, you know, these days, you know, information overload, where if there's something going on in the house or there's an issue with your child, it's, you know, you can basically jump on Google or Facebook, or people do, and just get an opinion or try and solve a problem. But, you know, our mums raised us without all that kind of stuff. There was maybe some books out, and if they didn't have the book at home, then, you know, off the library or buy it if they could, I guess. But, you know, do you think it was a lot harder back then in terms of those kind of things, like a screaming baby, you're not too sure what's going on, or even a toddler or going through the teenage years? You know, I think it might have been a lot harder back then too.
Yeah, yes and no. I think you could rely on instinct a bit more. Instinct and gut feel is generally a pretty good way to go in these things, and I'd still rely on gut instinct if I came across a lot of these things. It's almost paralysis by so much information. You don't know what to believe and what to action, so you kind of end up doing nothing. So I reckon there's two sides to that coin. It's an interesting one though. Instinct's a really important thing. People have been raising kids forever, so somewhere in you, you have that instinct, and mums especially. Brian, we mentioned before about your mum was a single mum. When did that roughly happen?
Good question. I was 20, going on 22.
Okay, and you're the youngest? You're the middle? You're the eldest?
Eldest. Still, my sister's still at home. She is 19. And my brother, up until recently, about 6 months ago, he headed off to Canada to do a bit of a 2-year stint over there, but he was still at home as well. Yeah, so my sister would have been probably about 12.
Yeah.
And my brother would have been, he was just finishing school.
Okay.
So
they're peak awkward times. Like, an awkward time is a guy turning sort of 17, 18. That's when guys kind of go, they have the potential to kind of lose their way a little bit. And a girl turning 12 coming into puberty is a really difficult time and a difficult period to manage. It wasn't even a pun. So yeah, your mum there dealing with those by herself, and then everything else you mentioned before, that's unreal.
I think, yeah, I mean, my mum would, on the basis of just the incredibly kind and optimistic and positive person that she is, with a lot of hardship that she's gone through. Like, even during this time, her mum passed away. During the time of all that sort of happening, and her dad passed away when she was 16. So yeah, she doesn't have any parents around anymore. But just finding out, like, it was a very, very tough time for probably about 2 to 3 years. And only now finding out, because I'm a bit older and everything like that, a lot more about that time. And I was also moved as well. So I was also, I was there for 6 months in the same state, and then I moved across the side of the country, which was all kind of predetermined before it happened. But finding out, yeah, sort of what she went through, and also the sacrifices that she went through to make sure that, you know, my brother and sister were shielded from as many things as possible, and still were able to do everything that they wanted to do, and the amount of things that she held for that time period, and literally would be holding it at 2 a.m. in the morning when nobody's around to see, and all those kind of things. And yeah, she's still one of the most positive, kind, and optimistic people I've ever met in my life. So for that, I think, again, you're talking about sacrifice and that kind of thing. I have no doubt in my mind at any time in our life with my mother that, you know, a gun could have been held to any of our heads and she'd be the first one to jump in front of it.
I think that is an excellent place to wrap up for this week. And I think every mother feels exactly the same way, Ron. You encapsulated that perfectly. So everyone out there, that does wrap it up for this week. Do subscribe to Daddy Eats Last on iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review. Tell your mates about your podcast, especially if they are guys. Most of all, thanks for listening, and go and tell your mother that you love her. We'll be back next week for another episode, or should I say serving, of Daddy Eats Last. I'm not even going to make a dad joke this week. Catch you next week.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.